Lately, I've been thinking about why everything feels so fake. Not fake in the obvious sense, not the filters or the influencers or the endless sponsored posts, but in the deeper sense that life itself feels a little bit manufactured, like everything we do is happening behind glass. And what's interesting is that this didn't start with social media or smartphones. The roots of our burnout go back 100 years, to a century that promised us progress, convenience, and freedom, but quietly changed what it means to be human. The 20th century gave us everything we thought we wanted: faster production, cleaner homes, easier living, but also gave us a way of thinking that still shapes us today. It taught us to chase efficiency, to package beauty, and to perform happiness. It taught us that perfection is progress, and that more is always better. But somewhere in that race for progress, we lost something real. And now, even though we're surrounded by comfort and technology, everything feels strangely hollow. This is the story of how we got here, and how the 20th century made us burnt out. And hello everyone, my name is Laura, welcome to my channel. Chapter 1. The Machine That Changed Everything. At the start of the 20th century, machines were seen as miracles. They represented a hope, a promise that life could finally be easier, faster, cleaner, and more efficient. For the first time, the future felt engineered. In factories and cities across the world, invention became a form of religion. The whir of engines and the shine of steel symbolized progress itself. People truly believed that if we could just make things faster, we could make life better. Before industrialization, life had a natural rhythm. Days unfolded around sunlight, seasons, and survival. People baked their own bread, stitched their own clothes, and repaired what they owned. Work was slower, but it was also sensory. You could feel it, smell it, see the result of the labor. Everything took time, and that time created connection to the world, to others, and to ourselves. When machines took over, we didn't just lose the effort, we lost the intimacy. The touch of hands was replaced by the hum of motors. What was once an act of care, kneading dough, mending fabric, sharpening a tool, became something to eliminate. Slowness became a flaw. Manual work became something to escape. And in this process, we started to distance ourselves from the world we live in. The industrial age replaced rhythm and productivity. Time itself became measurable, divided, and managed. Factories ran on schedules instead of sunlight. The workday was no longer guided by hunger or exhaustion, but by the clock. The value of a person became tied to how much they could produce in a given hour. Even rest became something to earn rather than a natural part of existence. It was around this time that the language of progress began to sound eerily familiar to how we speak today: time-saving, efficiency, and optimization. The industrial worker and the modern content creator are not that different. Both are asked to produce endlessly, both are measured by output, and both live under the illusion that if they just work faster, they'll finally feel free. That's when burnout was born, long before laptops or email. The constant pressure to perform, to keep up with the machine, reshaped the human spirit. It created the idea that rest was indulgent and productivity was moral. The faster the world moved, the more invisible slowness became. People started to feel guilty for not doing enough, a feeling that has somehow survived every new technology since. Once we equated efficiency with success, we started believing that if we weren't constantly doing, we weren't worth anything. That same belief still drives now, just in a different costume. Instead of steam engines, we have smartphones. Instead of factory bells, we have notifications. We've replaced gears with algorithms, but the rhythm is the same. Our screens have become the new machines of modern life. We scroll and refresh with that same mechanical pace that factories once demanded from their workers. The goal is still speed, still quantity, still constant visibility. And just like the factory worker, we measure our lives by output, followers, engagement, and productivity presence. The machine that changed everything didn't just industrialize work. It industrialized us. It taught us to see time as currency, attention as capital, and rest as failure. It trained us to move faster than our hearts were ever meant to go. And the strange part is, even now, a century later, we still call that progress. Chapter 2. The Performance of the Modern Woman. The 20th century didn't just change how we worked. It changed who we thought we were. And no one felt that more than women. As technology entered the home, the idea of the modern woman was born. She was sleek, organized, efficient, and effortlessly composed, a symbol of progress. The industrial age may have been driven by machines, but it was also held together by the image of the woman who could operate them without breaking a sweat. By the 1950s, this image was everywhere. Magazines and television commercials showed smiling women in bright kitchens, dressed like they were attending a dinner party while doing laundry. Every new appliance, the washing machine, the vacuum, the electric oven, was marketed as liberation. You weren't just buying convenience, you were buying modernity, a better version of yourself. But that promise was misleading. Convenience didn't free her, it simply gave her a new kind of responsibility. The responsibility to appear effortlessly perfect. For the first time, a woman's home became an extension of her identity. Her curtains, her meals, even the shine of her floors reflected her moral worth. Cleanliness wasn't just next to godliness, it was next to femininity. The modern woman wasn't supposed to rest, she was supposed to glow. She was expected to master both efficiency and grace, managing the home like a corporation and herself like a product. As the decades passed, her role changed, but the performance didn't. In the 60s and 70s, the feminist movement offered a new kind of freedom. Women could work, earn their own money, and pursue independence. But even then, the expectation of perfection lingered. The career woman of the late 20th century could have it all: the job, the family, the figure, the social life. But behind the glossy magazine covers and aspirational slogans, many women felt the same quiet exhaustion that their mothers had. Liberation came with fine print. The 1980s took this even further. Women entered the workforce in record numbers, but they were told to act like men and look like models. Shoulder pads, red lipstick, power suits, symbols of ambition, but also of armor. It was still performance, just on a different stage. The working woman wasn't allowed to appear tired, overwhelmed, or unsure. She had to be efficient and attractive, commanding yet likable. She had to win in every category, even in systems that were never built for her. Then came the 2000s and the 2010s, decades of rebranding. The girl boss era told women to monetize their ambition. Feminism became fashionable. Empowerment was something you could buy, printed on coffee mugs, sold through skincare campaigns, posted under motivational quotes on Instagram. But behind the confidence was the same exhaustion, just dressed in millennial pink. And now in the 2020s, she's been reinvented again. Internet calls her that girl, or the clean girl, or the soft life woman. She wakes up at 6 a.m., makes her bed, drinks lemon water, journals about gratitude, applies lip gloss, and films the entire thing in perfect natural lighting. She's mindful, balanced, and glowing, at least on camera. The aesthetic has changed, but the underlying message hasn't. To be a woman is to be constantly improving, optimizing, and presenting. What's interesting is that this new effortlessness, femininity, was born from burnout. The soft light is a reaction to hustle culture, yet it still functions within it. It tells women to slow down, but to look beautiful while doing it. It tells us to rest, but to film that rest and share it online. The cycle never ends, it just rebrands itself to feel new. Each generation of women has been told to strive for ease, but what we're really striving for is control over our homes, our time, our bodies, our image. And control, no matter how pretty it looks, is exhausting. We've been taught that if we can just organize everything, our schedules, our diets, our routines, our personalities, will finally feel at peace. But that peace never comes, because performance never stops. It simply updates with the times like software. The same expectation that haunted a housewife now follows an influencer. Be perfect and make it look easy. The truth is, the modern woman has always been a construction, shaped by advertising, shaped by culture, shaped by the technologies meant to serve her. She's never been just a person, she's been an ideal. And maybe that's why so many women today are tired. We're not just working hard, we're performing perfection in a world that keeps changing the rules. Chapter 3, The Century of Spectacle. If the industrial age taught us to value speed, the age of media taught us to value appearance. The 20th century didn't just change how we worked, it changed how we saw ourselves. As cinema, photography, and advertising began to shape culture, life slowly turned into a kind of performance. The invention of the camera allowed ordinary people to see themselves the way celebrities and models were portrayed, polished, posed, and desirable. And for the first time in history, image began to carry as much power as substance. This was the birth of the spectacle, a world where appearance could define reality. The early 1900s brought silent films and glamorous movie stars who embodied fantasy. Hollywood didn't just sell entertainment, it sold aspiration. The screen became a mirror reflecting who people wanted to be. Then came the golden age of advertising in the 1950s, which transformed those dreams into consumer goals. A woman buying a new vacuum wasn't just cleaning her home. She was performing progress, signaling that she was modern, capable, and feminine in the right way. Advertising didn't just sell products, it sold identities. The housewife, the bombshell, the career woman, the rebel all became roles that could be purchased and performed. Each archetype came with its own aesthetic code. The pearls and pressed aprons, the red lips and pin curls, the sleek suit and cigarette. Belong meant to look the part. It was an early form of branding, personal identity repackaged as visual shorthand. The idea never went away, it simply evolved. Today we're still living inside that same spectacle, but now the stage is digital. The influencer is the natural descendant of the 1950s ad model. She's not just selling a product, she's selling a version of herself that makes the product feel essential. Her personality is the brand. Her lifestyle is the advertisement. Social media didn't invent this performance, it perfected it. What once appeared on glossy magazine covers now exists in endless scrollable feeds. Every user is both an audience and an actor. Every image, from the morning coffee shop to the vacation photo, becomes part of the personal campaign. The difference is that now we aren't just consuming the spectacle, we're producing it ourselves. Even the idea of authenticity has become something to perform. We talk about being real online, but even our vulnerability is often filtered, captioned, and algorithmically optimized. The messy parts of life are allowed to appear only if they're aesthetically pleasing. Crying selfies, mental health check-ins, and raw confessions are presented with the same lighting and editing as brand partnerships. The line between honesty and performance has blurred beyond recognition. We film our morning routines and call them self-care, but they often function as quiet additions for belonging. The candlelight, the skincare, the oat milk lattes, all part of a visual language that signals balance, discipline, and success. We're not necessarily lying. We're curating, and what's most insidious is that we've started to experience life through the curation. We see a moment not for what it feels like, but for how it looks on camera. Even rebellion has been absorbed into the spectacle. Moments that once resisted mainstream ideals, punk, grunge, bohemianism, were all eventually turned into marketable aesthetics. The same process is happening online now. Anti-influencer trends, de-influencing, even digital minimalism all end up becoming their own curated brands. Every act of resistance becomes another style to consume. The spectacle has become so normalized that we barely notice it. It's no longer confined to screens, it's woven into how we live, dress, decorate, and speak. The boundaries between self-expression and marketing have dissolved. We're constantly managing our own image, even in private. We don't just perform for others, we perform for ourselves, trying to meet the invisible standards that we've internalized from years of exposure to polished lives. That's why so much of modern life feels fake. Because the spectacle isn't just around us, it's inside us. We've learned to see ourselves through the camera's eye, to judge our worth by how it appears, not how it feels. Every gesture, every choice becomes a potential post. The performance never ends because the stage is everywhere. The irony is that the more we chase the image of the perfect life, the further we drift from the reality of living. We can make every surface beautiful, every moment aesthetic, but the cost is depth. And that's the quiet heartbreak of the spectacle. We've created a world that looks more alive than it feels. Chapter 4, The Cult of Convenience. By the mid-20th century, the great dream of modernity had fully taken hold. The dream of life without effort. Every new product promised to make living easier. The mid-20th century was the washing machine, the vacuum cleaner, the automatic car, the frozen dinner, all symbols of progress that told us that our time was finally being returned to us. Advertisements showed smiling families and immaculate homes, promising that technology would give us freedom. But the truth is, it didn't give us free time. It simply changed how we spent it. Before convenience culture, much of daily life required rhythm and repetition. You cooked slowly, cleaned deliberately, and planned carefully because there were limits of time, energy, and access. The promise of modernity was to erase those limits. But when you remove limits, you remove rest. The more time we saved, the more time we found new ways to fill it. By the 1960s, efficiency had become a moral ideal. a good person, especially a good woman, was someone who could manage it all. The convenience products that were supposed to make life easier actually set higher standards. You weren't allowed to just keep your home clean. You were expected to keep it perfect. And even as technology reduced the physical labor of daily life, it quietly increased the mental labor of maintaining it. The same thing is happening now, only with different tools. The apps that were supposed to save us time only make us busier. Our calendars are automated, our groceries can appear on our doorstep, our emails write themselves, yet somehow we feel more overwhelmed than ever. Because automation doesn't reduce responsibility, it multiplies it. For every task we outsource, we add another expectation. Convenience has also changed our relationship to time itself. Instead of experiencing life in moments, we began to consume it in fragments. The pace of convenience rewired our attention span, first through television, then through the internet, and now through TikTok. Everything becomes faster, shorter, and easier to digest. But when everything is effortless, nothing feels valuable. We lose patience for process, curiosity for depth, and appreciation for things that take time. Convenience was supposed to make us free, but it also made us detached. We no longer touch the world directly. We order, swipe, and scroll. We can get everything we want without moving, but that also means we no longer feel the effort behind what we consume. Food doesn't taste the same when it arrives in a box. Clothes don't carry meaning when they show up in a plastic bag. The more accessible everything became, the more disconnected we became from the physical world. Even our rest isn't immune. Rest used to mean stepping away from the world, but now it's just another part of the performance. We track our sleep, monitor our steps, and film our morning routines for strangers. Even when we're trying to relax, we're still optimizing. Rest has become measurable, aesthetic, and public, another form of productivity in disguise. Convenience turned care into consumption. You can buy candles, silk pillowcases, skincare fridges, and call it self-care. But if you're still rushing through it, you're not actually resting. You're just performing relaxation for an audience that doesn't exist. And the saddest part is we've learned to associate ease with worth. We admire people who make it look effortless, who appear calm and composed, while quietly burning out. But the truth is, ease isn't always a sign of peace. Sometimes it's a sign of numbness, or being so overstimulated that we mistake passivity for calm. Convenience promised us a life of ease, but what it really gave us was life without texture. Everything is faster, smoother, and more efficient, and yet we long for the friction that once made things feel real. Maybe that's why trends like baking bread, thrifting, or analog photography feel comforting. They bring back the resistance that modern life has erased. They remind us what it feels like to earn something slowly. We've spent a century trying to make life easier, but maybe the goal was never to eliminate effort. Maybe it was to make effort meaningful again. Chapter 5, The Death of Originality. By the end of the 20th century, life had entered a new phase of acceleration. Everything, production, consumption, communication, moved faster than ever before. Factories could mass-produce products in minutes. Television could broadcast images to millions. And by the end of the century, the internet would deliver information instantly. The result was a world flooded with content, objects, images, messages, all competing for attention. And when everything is designed to capture attention, true creativity struggles to survive. Art stopped being about expression and started being about engagement. The question was no longer, what does this mean? But, will people notice it? The shift quietly changed the purpose of creation itself. Originality once came from curiosity, experimentation, and risk, from trying something without knowing how it could be received. But as media became commercialized, art had to justify itself through results. It needed to be liked, shared, and profitable. By the 1980s and 1990s, consumerism had fused completely with culture. Fashion, music, and even subcultures were driven by market logic. The punk movement, born from anti-establishment energy, was quickly absorbed into mainstream advertising. Grunge, which became a rejection of image, became a style sold in department stores. Even rebellion became a brand. The message was clear. In a capitalist society, nothing stays radical for long. Everything eventually becomes aesthetic. And the logic continues today, just on a digital stage. The internet promised individuality, a space where everyone could share the voice, but instead, it created an environment where everyone is constantly imitating each other. The algorithm rewards what's familiar. The safest way to grow is to repeat what already works. So instead of innovation, we get repetition. The same sounds, the same poses, the same video formats recycled endlessly. Even rebellion now has a look. On TikTok, you can have a mob wife, a coquette, a clean girl, or a downtown girl. Each of these aesthetics claims to offer something different: power, sweetness, sophistication, or edge. But they follow the same formula. You pick an identity, collect the visuals that match it, and perform it online. It feels like self-expression, but it's still conformity, just curated through filters and soundtracks. Social media turned individuality into marketing. We no longer just have personalities, we have brands. Your interests, your clothes, your opinions, they are all part of your online identity. You don't share who you are, you manage it like a business. The line between me and my image has blurred. And when everything is curated, nothing feels spontaneous. Even vulnerability. Something that should be unfiltered has become a performance. We see it in Get Ready With Me breakdowns, soft-spoken confessions, or tearful TikToks with lo-fi music in the background. The emotions are often real, but the delivery is still designed for an audience. It's not that people are being fake, it's that the internet has trained us to present authenticity in a format that's palatable and visually pleasing. We've reached a strange cultural moment where we crave originality and authenticity more than ever. Yet we live inside systems that make both nearly impossible. The moment something feels genuine, it's commodified, turned into an aesthetic, a hashtag, a trend cycle. Even nostalgia has become a marketing strategy. The return of 90s fashion, analog photography, and vintage aesthetics isn't just cultural memory. It's a reaction to the exhaustion of constant newness. The irony is that the more we try to be unique, the more we end up looking the same. That's not failure or creativity. It's the result of a world that measures value and attention. When the goal is to be visible, originality becomes a risk. And most people don't want to risk being ignored. This is the quiet tragedy of modern creativity. We are surrounded by endless tools to express ourselves. But instead of using them to explore, we use them to conform. We create content, not art. We follow trends instead of instincts. We edit ourselves to be more likable, and in the process, we lose the rawness that once made creation meaningful. It's not that originality has disappeared, it's that it's harder to recognize in a culture built on an imitation. The internet has made creativity abundant, but authenticity scarce. And maybe that's why everything feels so repetitive, because we've learned how to make things that look beautiful, but we've forgotten how to make things that feel alive. Chapter 6. The Age of Disconnection. By the time the 20th century ended, we had everything our ancestors dreamed of: technology, convenience, abundance, and comfort. For the first time in human history, most people didn't have to worry about survival. We could order food without leaving the house, speak to someone across the world in seconds, and access centuries of knowledge with a tap. In every measurable way, we won. But as life got easier, it also started to feel emptier. We became the first society in history to be overstimulated and undernourished at the same time. Every moment can be filled, every silence interrupted by noise, every boredom cured by a scroll. Yet the more stimulation we have, the less satisfied we feel. We consume endlessly: media, opinions, entertainment, and aesthetics, but rarely stop long enough to absorb any of it. We're connected to everyone, yet deeply disconnected from ourselves. This is what modern loneliness looks like. It's not isolation in the traditional sense. It's the quiet ache of being surrounded by activity but starved of intimacy. We text constantly but rarely talk. We share our lives publicly but rarely feel seen. We replace human connection with digital presence and call it community. It's easy to blame social media for this disconnection, but it didn't start with the internet. The groundwork was laid a century ago when progress became more important than presence. The industrial and technological revolutions taught us to value productivity, convenience, and control above all else. We learned to measure time instead of feeling it, to consume instead of create, and to collect experiences rather than inhabit them. The internet simply amplified what was already true, that we had been trading presence for progress for a very long time. The more advanced our tools became, the more distance they created between us and the world. At first, it was physical machines replaced by manual labor, and we stopped using our hands. Then it became emotional. We began outsourcing not just work, but feeling too. Instead of writing letters, we send emojis. Instead of remembering, we archive. Instead of being known, we're followed. This disconnection isn't just social, it's sensory. Our lives happen between screens now. We no longer touch the world directly. We consume images of nature instead of stepping into it. We photograph our meals instead of tasting them. The more we document, the less we participate. We're living in what some call a secondhand reality, a world experienced through representations, not sensations. That's why so many people are nostalgic for things they've never actually experienced. Vintage fashion, vinyl records, Polaroid cameras, cottagecore, slow living. These aren't just trends, they're cultural therapy. They're symptoms of a collective craving for slowness, tangibility, and imperfection. People film themselves baking bread, reading old books, arranging flowers, or writing in journals, not just to be aesthetic, but to feel something real. These moments remind us of what the digital world can't replicate: texture, smell, time, patience. But even the longing has been commodified. Slowness itself has become a lifestyle, curated, monetized, and shared online. The same platforms that made us disconnected now sell us the illusion of reconnection. We see digital detox vlogs edited like brand campaigns, or off-grid living videos sponsored by tech companies. The irony is almost poetic. Even a rebellion is content. Still, these trends hint at something genuine. Beneath the branding, there's a real desire to return to the body, to live at human speed again. The rise of mindfulness, therapy culture, journaling, and aesthetic nostalgia all point to the same thing: a generation to remember how to feel. We don't just want comfort anymore, we want meaning. The problem is we've forgotten how to be bored, how to wait, how to exist without constant stimulation. Silence now feels awkward. Stillness feels unproductive, but those were once the spaces where creativity, connection, and reflection lived. We can't rebuild meaning without reclaiming slowness. In a strange way, the 20th century didn't just give us a modern life. It gave us modern loneliness. Every innovation designed to bring us closer has also made it easier to stay apart. We live in an age where we can communicate instantly, but struggle to feel understood. And maybe that's why, despite all the progress, we're drawn back to the simple, analog, and perfect parts of living. The things that remind us we're still human. We're not just tired of screens, we're tired of feeling nothing behind them. We want to touch the world again. We want to live slowly enough to notice the light changing in the afternoon, the sound of your own breathing, the way it feels to do one thing at a time. Because in a world built on constant motion, the most radical act might be to stop and truly be present. When we look at everything the 20th century gave us, the machines, the technology, the speed, the comfort, it's impossible not to be impressed. We built a world that would have looked like a science fiction to our ancestors. But the irony is that we're still busy building a future of endless convenience. We quietly lost touch with the parts of life that made it real. We wanted freedom from labor, but we ended up working all the time. We wanted connection, but became spectators of each other's lives. We wanted individuality, but we built systems that reward sameness. The 20th century didn't just modernize us, it mechanized us. It taught us to treat our time, our attention, and even our emotions like resources to be optimized. And now, in the 21st century, we're living with the consequences of that mindset. Everything is available instantly, yet nothing feels satisfying. We're overstimulated but underwhelmed, connected but lonely, informed but anxious. We've mistaken movement for meaning and efficiency for happiness. The more control we gain, the less peace we seem to have. But maybe that's this moment. This collective exhaustion and disillusionment isn't just a breakdown. Maybe it's the first sign of waking up. Because when everything starts to feel fake, what we're really noticing is the absence of feeling itself. The ache for something real means we haven't lost the capacity to care. We've just buried it under noise. You can see that longing everywhere, in the return of slow living, in the popularity of analog photography, in the rise of minimalism and self-care rituals. These moments aren't just about rejecting progress, they're about reclaiming humanity. They're small reminders that life isn't supposed to feel like an algorithm. It's supposed to be unpredictable, tactile, and sometimes beautifully inconvenient. We can't undo that last century. We can't uninvent the machine or delete the internet, but we can choose how we move through this world, slowly, thoughtfully, and without intention. We can choose to let things take time again. We can choose to be present in the moments that don't demand attention. We can choose to live for ourselves, not for the performance of it. Because real life, the kind that feels textured and alive, doesn't happen on a timeline or an aesthetic grid. It happens in the in-between moments, pauses, and imperfections, the parts no one else sees. The 20th century made us believe that ease was the goal. But maybe what we really want isn't ease, it's meaning. And meaning can't be automated, optimized, or aestheticized. It can only be lived. So maybe the answer to all this noise is simple: to slow down, to touch the world again, to let yourselves be imperfect, to cook slowly, rest deeply, to make things with our hands, to look at people instead of screens, to remember that being human was never supposed to be convenient. It was supposed to be beautifully hard. Because in a world that's built to numb us, the most radical thing we can do is feel. So thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments below. I feel like everything essentially changed when the iPhone was invented. I had no idea what was going to happen. I remember when I first heard of it, I was like, this sounds weird. Why would I want like an iPod that's a phone? Like, okay, whatever that means. But then it just changed the entire world. It was almost like the invention of the wheel or the light bulb. Things moved fast in the 20th century, and that we always wanted this convenience. But now there's just no going back. And it's true, even waiting in a line. If you're waiting in a line at a store, you're impatient and you want to check your phone. You're sitting in traffic, you're like, oh, I want to check my phone. It's like there's no idle time. I just can't believe that I lived a life before I had the phone, and that I was okay with that. Now I'd almost get anxiety going to a busy city, stepping on a subway and not having my phone. But that was life back then, and I seem to be fine. It's I almost became more anxious now with the more technology. Anyways, thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.